Yes,
Perfect.
please.
Uh, so, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this CSR conference, which is held every year by CII to bring all of us together on what we can do and what we ought to be doing to build a more inclusive, more equitable nation. And all of you have done great work during all these years, and we need to do more. Today with us are several eminent speakers, and I just want to introduce them first before we dive into the session itself. Uh, I would first start by saying we are very thankful for Ramanan Ramanathan, Mission Director, Utter Innovation Mission, Additional Secretary, Niti Aayog, Government of India, to be with us. His presence means a lot, and he will speak about various elements of how uh, our current government is building in several elements which can bring in equitable future for us, more inclusive future for us, using all the tools of innovation. We have a very special address in the opening session by Mr. Anshu Gupta, founder of Goonj, whose organization has done terrific work all over India and continues to do. And he's going to speak about broadly the directions we need to look at, and we look forward to his guidance. We also will have address from my colleague and the senior colleague and co-chair of CII National Committee, Rumjum Chatterjee, who is also the group managing director of Feedback Infra. We have a message from Mr. Suresh Prabhu, the G20 and G7 Sherpa of India for Government of India. He's not been able to be with us, but certainly has sent his recording and has sent his best wishes to all of us here in our endeavors and our efforts together. So, firstly, I welcome you all once again, including the industry, media, and people from civil society who joined in a virtual platform. I just would say that this is new for all of us conducting these programs virtually. But I think over a period of last few months, we've all gotten used to this platform more than physical meetings. Hopefully, with this vaccine and the news we are hearing, good news we are hearing about changes on the way, we will probably be able to meet face to face very soon. And I'm very sure the CSR organizations of various companies and all the CSR entities, all the NGOs which are there, will play a pivotal role both in vaccination, also more importantly in building the common ecosystem and making sure the communication to communities happens. The communities are pulled in the right direction and don't move away from vaccines just because of some misgivings. I think that effort will be there. But rather than speak about that, let me speak broadly about our theme this for the summit, which is Future Forward Rebuilding CSR. And this has been done in a way that as we come out of this pandemic, I think we need to rethink the way we do CSR. There have been several learnings which we've had in the last few months. I think those learnings have been put to work. And also, there are certain changes which are being requested from government, and government is actively working on those, and those should help us to move forward. Uh, Fundamentally, I think we've had a huge loss of livelihood, reverse migration of people into rural India, and shift to work from home. All these trends we are aware, and I'm really happy that corporate India has risen to the occasion, has provided the relief, rehabilitation. This is a pandemic of national disaster, and they've also declared all COVID-19 spending government has declared would qualify for CSR spending. This was a very significant step, which all of us played effort to get it done, and we're thankful to government for making those changes, which will help us to uh, make sure we come out of this pandemic much stronger than what we went in. Uh, I think we also have this whole issue that how do we look forward beyond this, because we're coming to end of this pandemic, and that is why this whole theme about how do we prepare for new normal. I'll just highlight few of the points which need our attention. Uh, I think we need to look at this whole point about the new normal which we have. Also, the role of industry in driving change, the role of potential of digital technologies, especially health, providing healthcare for all, education for all, what it can do. Also, the digital divide. How can we sort of stop the digital divide? And lastly, this also opens up a new area of collaboration amongst all of us. How do we have collaboration to have a greater impact? I think these are all very important as we speak, as we look forward to the future. I think things like water, sanitation, healthcare continue to be challenges, but now we can accelerate the change at costs which are very, very much lower, and more sharp delivery systems can be enabled to ensure those who need get the benefits first. And overall, I think this is the right time to think about social transformation we want to bring about in a more equitable way as we move forward, and how can we come together to enable that social transformation. There are several areas of collaboration, and one of them would be pooling of CSR fund. I think CSR Act actually allows us to pool these funds for transformational projects, and we've had several examples where we can address social issues. One example is from Tata Group itself, where we have something called Tata Strive. It is a network of Tata and non-Tata companies to build skill development and also improve the ITI infrastructure. So hopefully we can do several of these efforts which move towards employment, entrepreneurship, and education. I think these are areas which are very important in terms of long-term income generation. The area of technology development also is something we need to collaborate, and CII has been at the forefront in terms of working with farmers, agri sector. We've also been at the forefront of how this can impact environment through our air quality mission. All these are parts of what we call as building more sustainable India. And the other element of collaboration, of course, is advocacy, where we all can work together in terms of common reporting standards, common regulation, common legislation. So fundamentally, I think we have a great opportunity here in terms of impacting the future, and we need to work on a big theme around employability and employment generation, mainly because of the youthfulness of the country. And it is a risk, it is an opportunity both, and I'm sure we will turn this risk into opportunity by our efforts at the community level to enable more and more of youth of this country to participate in income generation, in generation of wealth. And this can be done only collaboratively, which is why the theme around collaboration is very, very important. I think the CIS National CSR Committee will continue to explore these collaborative efforts to make sure there is a special focus on rebuilding livelihood and also strengthening healthcare. I think we all look forward to the deliberation and different perspective which panelists will bring today, and participants will also bring more focus on these discussions around CSR on the way forward. Clearly, CSR has a pivotal role in both social development and economic development, and our deliberations today will enable us to build those strong strategies, a different set of strategies, maybe a change in the approaches we've had to build a more equitable and inclusive India. At this time, I would like to invite and warmly welcome Mr. Ramanan Ramanathan, Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Additional Secretary, Niti Aayog, a former colleague of mine from the Tata Group. A brief introduction. Ramanan is Mission Director of Atal Innovation Mission, a flagship national innovation initiative of Prime Minister and Government of India under Niti Aayog. As the Mission Director of AIM, Ramanan has been instrumental in the launch and execution of several nationwide innovation and entrepreneurship initiatives. One of the key initiatives being Atal Tinkering Labs, being established in schools nationwide. Many companies have partnered in this project as CSR, and this initiative has been showcased how government and industry can partner to leverage each other's strengths. Over to you, Ramanan. You have 15-20 minutes to give us an overview of your thoughts at this point of time. We are all eagerly awaiting to listen to you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mukundan, and thank you for the generous introduction, but also more importantly for setting the framework of this particular deliberation, which according to me is extremely important at this point in time. As you rightly pointed out, we are living in a COVID-19 world. The COVID-19, a simple virus, has disrupted nations across the world. It has disrupted supply chains. It has created grievous loss of lives and livelihood. It has in fact, created a fear of uncertainty on not only when this pandemic is going to come to an end, but also the other challenges and other global pandemics that may be lurking in the horizon. We have been talking about issues related to climate change. We have always been deliberating on what impact climate change can have on the planet. And this particular virus has shown in a very stark manner how nations are still not ready to be able to respond to such crisis at a global level. So I think the COVID-19 crisis has been a wake-up moment for all of us. And in India, when we have a country with 1.3 billion people, we have more than 650,000 villages in our country. We have 715 districts, out of which 115 are called as aspirational districts because they are at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of access to basic healthcare, access to education, affordable housing, clean drinking water, sanitation, waste management, and so on. We are having more than 4,000 small towns and cities, and we have only 8 tier 1 cities. And these 8 tier 1 cities are the ones where everybody is flocking from rural India, from the coastal district, from the tier 2, tier 3 cities. And that is clearly an unsustainable proposition. And this particular crisis brought out starkly the need for us to create thousands of hubs of innovation and job creation across the length and breadth of the country. So this COVID-19 has been a wake-up call. But at the same time, I have to say, being in the government now for the last 3.5 years and being associated with a number of initiatives that the government has been steadily launching to spur innovation, entrepreneurship, skill development, job creation across the country, I think we are in a much better position today to have dealt with the crisis than ever before. And more importantly, what the COVID-19 crisis brought out very, very significantly is the tremendous collaboration of private sector, NGOs, civil society, the government and academia in being able to address not only the COVID-19 crisis, but also what should be our strategies for a post-COVID-19 world. While we have many challenges ahead, as you had listed out. We are still a country with 22% of our country below the poverty line. We have 44% of our country agri-economy based. However, we do have a lot of positive things going on in this country. First and foremost, as the Honorable Prime Minister has said in his clarion call for Atmanirbhar Bharat, there are 5 pillars on which the future of Atmanirbhar Bharat depends. And that future is going to be driven by tremendous focus on skill development, technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship and job creation. Now, let me, in the framework of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, share how important it is for corporates and for NGOs and civil society to come together, to synergize, to be able to address not only the challenges, but also the opportunities. We are living in a country which has a demographic dividend, which is the envy of many a country. We have 101.3 billion people, but more importantly, we have 65% of our country under 35 years old. We have 1.4 million schools in our country, over 10,500 engineering and related institutions, and over 39,000 colleges. Now that means almost a force of 150 million young students who are going to be entering into the workplace over the next 5 to 10 years. Now that's a tremendous advantage for any country to have. It represents a youthful workforce and energy that should be the envy of many a country. But how do we ensure that this demographic dividend does not become a demographic nightmare? That is only possible if we are able to create a nation of job creators, not just job seekers. We have to make sure, therefore, that a culture of innovation seeps through and permeates every part of the country, whether it is in the remote districts, the coastal districts, the tier 1, tier 2 cities, or whether it is in corporates or in NGOs or in civil society. We need to ensure that we become a problem-solving, innovative, mindset-oriented nation. Now, our school systems, for example, have been focusing on rote learning, and this has played its advantages to us so far. We have built, after all, $190 billion ITS industry as a result of our focus on education. But our education has so far focused on how do you get good marks in the school, go into a university, get into a good university, get good marks again, go to a university abroad, and then get good marks again and join Google, IBM, Tata Group, TCS, Wipro, and so on. So we have excelled in becoming job seekers. Not only have we excelled in that, we have have excelled in being able to provide services to global multinational companies all over the world. And they're flocking to India because of this tremendous focus on education and the ability of Indians to be able to deliver high quality services. But what has brought us here is not going to take us further. We have to become a nation of job creators and problem solvers and innovators if we want to position ourselves in the 21st century. And therefore, the Atal Innovation Mission, which has been formed, has taken this at heart. It is housed in the Niti Aayog, as you are aware, the National Institution for Transforming India. And every one of Atal Innovation Mission initiatives is towards two things. One, creating a culture of innovation across the length and breadth of our country. Creating a problem-solving innovative mindset in our school students, in our university students, and also in the industry. By the way, even in the industry, we have to promote innovation. Every corporate has to see how you can promote innovation and innovative thinking in your employees so that they're not just doing the routine things, but they become the agents of change and become the change makers. Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. If that is what you have to do, then you have to be disruptive both in the organization and outside. And therefore, the Atal Innovation Mission has launched thousands of Atal Tinkering Labs across the country. Now, these tinkering labs are dedicated innovation workspaces where the latest of technologies like 3D printers, robotics, IoT devices, miniaturized electronics, augmented virtual reality, do-it-yourself kits are being implemented in schools so that young students from grade 6 to grade 12 get an opportunity to tinker with, play with these technologies, create solutions for problems they see in and around the community that they live in, acquire a problem-solving innovative mindset, and thereby seed in themselves the potential of becoming an entrepreneur or an innovator of the future. Now, we have launched more than 10,000 Atal Tinkering Labs across the country. 6,500 of them are operational, and more than 5 million young students today are accessing and creating prototypes of innovations for problems that are aligned with sustainable development goals. One of the advantages of launching an initiative like this, which according to me is a game-changing initiative in any part of the world, there is no other country which has launched at this level. Such an initiative not only enables you to acquire problem-solving skills, but also gives the opportunity to introduce the concept of sustainable development goals, creating innovations that are going to be sustainable in nature, and also creating 21st century skills that are required. Now, how do corporates play a role in all of this? In fact, every one of our initiatives has been to involve corporates, to involve NGOs who play a very active role in making these initiatives successful. We are a very small organization here in Atal Innovation Mission. It's almost like a startup. We have only 25, 30 people. But we have now implemented more than 10,000 tinkering labs, and we are planning to increase that more. And that has happened because of corporates adopting tinkering labs and a large Mentor India network that we have created, one of the largest mentoring networks in the world. More than 10,000 mentors have voluntarily attached themselves to Atal Innovation Mission so that they can mentor young students from the tinkering labs, from the incubators, from the startups, and so on. So this is how we are building and taking advantage and leveraging the demographic dividend and CSR contributions. Every one of Atal Innovation Mission initiatives, for example, or anything related to innovation and supporting entrepreneurship is under the CSR Regulatory Act. So you are able to contribute not only from the point of view of CSR, but also you are able to, from a non-CSR point of view, how do you promote sustainable development goals and be a part of that ecosystem. Now, when these students who are going into universities they have to find a room and they have to find a space to be able to leverage their creative potential that they have developed in the schools in the form of startups and entrepreneurs. So the second part of Atal Innovation Mission is how do you create an ecosystem of entrepreneurship that supports young startups? We have launched for that purpose hundreds of incubators across the country. These incubators are designed to be world-class incubators. So the selection of an incubator is not just we give a grant of 10 crores to these incubators so that they can foster hundreds of startups. But the important thing is that these startups require support from the corporates and from the partners who are able to ensure that they bridge the various valleys of death in a startup's life cycle, whether it is mentoring support, venture capital support, whether it is business planning strategy support or domain support or access to domain and technology labs across the country. So that is how corporates can play an instrumental role in fostering a nation of startups. We have today more than 55,000 startups in India, and that's increasing. But they will only succeed if these incubators are world class and corporates and NGOs play a vital role in being able to bridge those valleys of death. Now, the third part that is very important to understand is Atal Innovation Mission wants to ensure, and the government wants to ensure, that we bring the benefits of innovation to the remotest parts of our country. Now, if you want to do that, we need to establish community innovation centers. So we have launched a series of community innovation centers across the country, and these community innovation centers will spur and replicate and apply innovations which are relevant to that community. For example, if you are in Goa, how do you ensure that the innovations are focusing on the fishing industry, the tourism industry, the cashew industry, or the mining industry? That is what is going to drive local innovation and local job creation. So these community innovation centers play a very important role, and through that, social innovation is being amplified across the length and breadth of the country. And that addresses the fourth pillar that the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned, and that is the pillar of socio-economic good. How do you ensure that socio-economic good and bridging the digital divide, making our society more inclusive and making them have access to all the basic things, whether you are in Salem or in Sikkim, you should be able to communicate and you should be able to market your products to Seattle and San Francisco. That's what the digital technology and digital medium is enabling us all to do. So how do we leverage digital technology to be able to bridge that social divide? And finally, all of this is because of the pillar of technology. The pillar of technology is making technology has become affordable, accessible, available, and advanced. You are having 3D printing revolutionizing the way you are able to conceptualize, design, define, and create a product right in front of your eyes. You don't need large manufacturing shops now. Your Kirana store or your small MSME unit can become an integral part of manufacturing accessories for the larger market. Robotics and automation is driving the next level of automation, but that is also enabling a new cadre of services and technical support services that are required in order to make it happen. Communication technologies like 5G technologies are going to create huge amount of possibilities because of the mobile revolution that has already swept India. The jam trinity that we are talking about, the 1 billion, more than 1 billion bank accounts which have been facilitated by the government, more than 1 billion Aadhaar IDs, unique IDs, and more than 1 billion phones is going to ensure a revolution in terms of solutions that can be brought to the remotest place of the country. And finally, we all need to ensure that these technologies and all of these pillars will get the support from CSR as well as corporates. From my point of view, Atal Innovation Mission, and I had the good fortune to coordinate a search for COVID-19 solutions across the country on behalf of DBT, DST, and all the Startup India, Invest India. What was remarkable was, Mukundan, that in this particular initiative, more than 1,500 startups within 1 month offered preventive, assistive, and some also curative solutions for the COVID-19 crisis. And that came from the startup community. So it was a wake-up call. From my point of view, this is very similar to the Y2K watershed moment that we had in our history. In Y2K, the whole world woke up to the Indian IT service capability. Y2K was a trigger, but then they suddenly realized how India could play a big role in supporting the entire world. And that built a $190 billion industry. In the similar manner, this COVID-19 crisis has revealed to the corporates to many institutions, to academia, government, that startups hold the key for us to be able to respond to this crisis in a very agile manner, leveraging technology, leveraging a fast growing economy that India has, leveraging the demographic dividend. Now, in all of this, I think it is very important that corporates embrace all these initiatives of the government. The government is very agile. Imagine an Arogya Setu solution just being rolled out within 3 weeks. That happened because the government bypassed the normal routes of an RFP and so on and so forth. It brought together industry, civil society, NGOs, and the private sector and the government to be able to come up with this solution now, which ranks among the top 3 in the world. So I think there is a tremendous opportunity for all of us to put our heads together and put our act together to make a huge difference and create the Atmanirbhar Bharat that the Honorable Prime Minister has been talking about, an inclusive India and a sustainable India, because an inclusive, sustainable India is also a solution for the rest of the world. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share a few thoughts on this occasion, and I wish all the best to all the people who are attending the conference.
Thank you so much, Ramanan. I think that was very, very energizing, very, very insightful. I think what you highlighted is, as we come out of this pandemic, the core crux of the nation building is going to be how do we sort of make sure the demographic dividend pays rich outcomes for us. And in that light, you also have highlighted that we need to build a nation of uh, not job seekers, but job creators. And for that to happen, you have clearly highlighted that we need to use that energy to find solutions which are innovative. And you're starting right at the bottom. We really did not know that 6,500 such tinkering labs have been established. 10,000 mentors have already part of this. And your call to the industry to cooperate in this, both in terms of setting up more labs, also incubation, which is you mentioned about the valley of death, and the other elements, including community innovation centers for large scale innovation to happen at local level. And you've rightly identified this as what you call as a Y2K moment for India, the COVID itself. Uh, and you've said that this C2K moment, which is the COVID 2K moment of ours, we should utilize this to leverage further to become a nation of entrepreneurs and nation of wealth creators. Terrific energy and very positive message for all of us. And thank you so much for being the kind support. And I'm sure those who are listening in will reach out to you. We will give your contacts. Many of them have it, but anyway, we'll allow them to sort of come in touch with you and sort of take this initiative forward so that we build a more inclusive, but also more innovative India. I think that has been your central mission. Thank you so much for those initial words. At this point, I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Anshu Gupta of Goonj. We all know him very well. He is a recipient of 2015 Raman Magsaysay Award, and he founded Goonj with a mission to highlight some basic but ignored needs of people on development agenda. And he used clothing as a metaphor. Under his leadership, Goonj has taken a great level of growth in terms of utilizing the urban base, which has been growing at rapid pace, into something which can trigger and work on rural development issues. We look forward to hearing from you, Anshu, in terms of how industry can play an impactful role, especially in the backdrop of this pandemic, and also how you think we can make our communities, in fact, more resilient against future crises. I think this is only one of the crises which has highlighted the fragility of the system, and your inputs and insights on that will be very, very useful. Over to you, Anshu. We are all eagerly looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, to speak on this. And I think my 10, 15 minutes will be also full of a lot of random thoughts. I don't, talk in the structured way, because this is also something which has given a lot of time for all of us to reflect. And I think no one is doubting on the intentions of all of us, but somewhere it's extremely important for us to understand what worked, what didn't work. And what worked, why, what didn't work, why. I mean, how come and this is something, I must have said in the last few months, at least 100 times, that the images of those millions of people who were walking on the road, was it just like one time, event, or these were new people in the society, or these people actually exist and these are not even invisible, but we never wanted to see. And what happened actually that these millions of people didn't trust people like us, right? Who are largely the decision makers and the opinion leaders. So what kind of society have we built? I think that's the question which each one of us really have to need to really think about it. And of course, I'm not doubting on the intentions of people. A lot of people did the best they could. I mean, there are enough people who were cooking at 5:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, with whatever utensils they had, and within 2 hours they were on the road to distribute food or to give food. I mean, this was also an epitome of goodness. Fine, large number of people didn't participate in these activities, unfortunately, but then a lot of people participated, and let's build up on the good. But the most important part is that my question, and when we talk about the CSR or the civil society or whatever responsibility we talk about, it's extremely important to dig into myself and find out that what kind of individual I am. How do I really behave in such kind of crisis? Person like me who are the product of subsidy of this country, and it's extremely important for us to understand that. I mean, I did my mass communication from IMC. I did my journalism and advertising in PR. In '98, when I was leaving Escorts, there was a very simple calculation which I did, that the institution where I studied, the fees should have been about 50,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees, whatever in those days. And I just paid a few thousand rupees. The other question to myself was that, was it possible to do this education if that fees was 30, 40,000 rupees? The answer came no, because I come from a very beautiful but middle class family of those days. And I know that the family was absolutely unable to afford that. So I think that was a realization that I am the biggest product of subsidy of this country. I mean, right from my education to my food is actually subsidized, grossly subsidized, and largely subsidized by the farmers of this country, right? I mean, how it happened that a large number of people who made house for me remained homeless, and the people who have been feeding me for the last 30, 40 years, unfortunately were forced to come in the queue to get the same 10 kg rice, which they have been producing and, giving it to me on a very, very subsidized rate. तो मैं ये मान के चलता हूँ कि it's extremely important for us to see कि भाई हम उन जख्मों पे तो पट्टी नहीं लगा रहे जो हमने दिए हैं, I mean, and that's very important to really realize somewhere कि क्या, can we really be more people oriented than the processes? Because what worked in this pandemic is the people. What worked in this pandemic is those smallest possible institutions and the last mile worker who were absolutely ignored. If you talk about the ASHA worker, if you talk about the PHC, if you talk about the many times ignored government health systems, if you talk about the government toilet, if you talk about the municipality workers, whole lot of those people who we have been not caring as a nation actually worked well. And all the fanciest airports and the biggest possible buildings were actually closed. All the most expensive cars were not working, but the cart of a municipality worker was working. It's extremely important for us to see that if we are talking about transformational change, what is that transformational change? Are we really understanding the problem in a much deeper way? Because in my opinion, as of now, for the next few years, there is nothing like post-COVID. It is with COVID, because let's not take COVID just as a health disaster, because it is not just a health disaster. It started with health, but then the kind of displacement, the kind of joblessness all across the world we saw, and the economic crisis which we see, it is not limited to the health crisis. So unless all other crises are over, it is the with COVID world. It is not the post-COVID world. I don't think that we are going back to the same kind of seminars in the future, even when the vaccination has come to the same level, because now we know that there is a better solution where we can actually avoid a lot of this travel and still meet each other. But yes, we can't hug, because that's a fake hug which comes on our WhatsApp. That's a different issue. So we will do that, but not in the same level. My humble request to all in this space is that I think CSR also needs to continue to fill the gaps. CSR, or most of us, need to learn more. Most of us really need to change our lenses. I mean, it's very sad to see that even today, the farmers who who grow more than 100, 200 different variety of pulses and rice are still called unskilled. And many of us who do a lot of innovation on papers in IITs are actually called innovators. मैं बहुत बार कहता हूं कि वो 2 आम की कलम जोड़ के तीसरा आम जो बना देता है, how come that person is not innovator? Why are we not valuing those people as skilled people instead of saying that when we make them or convert them into plumbers or or mechanics, they are skilled? Why are we not valuing what people already have, and why are we not building upon that? What is a harm in remaining? I mean, a large part of the population remains dependent on agriculture, but in a better way. What is a harm in that? This entire concept of bringing people from villages to city to remove the poverty, it failed. It miserably failed. Globally, it failed, because even if we are now trying to bring more people from the villages, we need to be answerable to ourselves that have we really solved the problems of the people who came? And if we really solved their problems, why did they go back? Because somewhere we didn't give them dignity, somewhere we didn't respect them for for what they are providing to us. That way. So going forward, in the positive way, to be honest, let us understand that hunger is one problem, but there are problems beyond that. What happened in the last few months, that a large part of the CSR money is now gone to the PPE kits, now might go to the vaccination and also to the hunger part of it. But the fact remains that a large number of civil society organizations have been working on various issues. And I do not understand the value of an institution which is working on mental health or cancer until unless I go through that or my family goes through that. Many times, unfortunately that happens, but these are extremely, extremely important issues on which large number of institutions have been working. Because we work with hundreds of partners, we see that there is huge amount of resource gap, because large part of the money which was allocated to them is now gone to the hunger part, but we need to go back to those causes, those institutions who have been working on those issues for decades, and these are extremely, extremely important issues. Second, I'm repeating that let's change the lenses and let's try to solve the problem, with people's lenses, that what is the issue and what is the solution. I mean, as I often say, that by creating roti.com, you don't provide roti. It's very easy to say for people like us that the life is simple because we can order, food on the net. But what we are not understanding, that right from growing that vegetable to cutting that vegetable to cooking to delivery, it's all human. No machine is delivering that. No internet is delivering that. It is all human. So how it is important for all of us to really give a lot of value to those fellow human beings if we really want to change this nation, instead of just the systems and processes. And then, we at Goonj, I often think that we have done about 4.5 million kgs of ration itself. And we also did about 2 lakh kgs of vegetables from the farmers. So we tried to analyze, and we said that what worked, what didn't work in our case. And we realized that maybe creating a network with a lot of trust and equal value to each other, that worked best. Because what happened is that you actually laid a pipeline in the country, like the telecom sector and other people are laying the optical fibers. So I think that's how we laid a pipeline in the country of relationships, of dignity, of equal participation, of removing the demeaning words like donor and beneficiary, but treating everyone as a stakeholder, of understanding that every single person, every single institution can bring a lot on the table. And it is not only the people who have money, but maybe the other people who do not have money but have skills, or who have local resources, or who can open up their life for us to enter in their life and in their area. I mean, that's their contribution, and it's a big contribution. I don't open my gate for any unknown person. And these people in the community really open their entire life for people like us to operate, to experiment, to pass, to fail. That's a huge contribution, to us. So how do we really value the people for whom we are trying to work as much bigger giver than the taker? And my last point, and then, if you have time for Q&A, wonderful. Otherwise, my last point is that it is high time that we understand that I am able to do all this again, because of the people who made house for me and who have been growing food for me. Why it is important to go back to the village India and divert our lot of resources to village India. A lot of people were cribbing before this crisis that cities are overcrowded. Right? Now millions of people decided to go back because those are their roots. This is the time that instead of doing a lot of work in the cities, we go back to the Indian villages and solve the problem there itself, because people have chosen to be there. People have gone back to the roots. And this also proves two larger point going forward. One, we have been saying that we in the country, we in the world should not wait for a disaster to respond, because poverty is an ongoing disaster. And we need to really tackle that in a big way. Second important point, we all are migrated. Most of us are migrated. I am certainly migrated, but I migrated by choice. A large number of people do not migrate by choice. Those are wrong perceptions, notions, and this pandemic and the reverse migration has proved it. Those people are migrated by compulsion. Even today, in 15,000 rupees, it is extremely tough for a family to survive in a slum. But even in 5,000 rupees for people, it is still little bit possible to survive in the village with lot of dignity. How do we make sure that the people of the villages start producing for the villages and not only for the cities? How do we make sure that we do not treat people in the villages of this country, which is a majority of the population, as just the beneficiaries? They are the giver. I mean, the day we start paying minimum wages to the farmers of this country, Mukundan, we can do this calculation. Me and you cannot even touch rice. So we are on the constant subsidy, and we are the constant beneficiaries of the farmers or the people of the villages in this country. I think that's where we, as opinion leader or so-called, leaders in various forums, as we all are called, need to really realize. And it's high time that it's not about giving back; it's about paying back. It's about changing lenses. It's about wearing those lenses, and with those lenses, find the problem and find a solution. No big solution from the city will really operate. It's a huge country, so data is always good. I mean, getting a million or few million is just a matter of a few villages and few cities. But we should not, feel too happy about it. I think even when we have a large data of the success, there's large data which needs our attention. And fortunately, with the CSR Act and with surviving in this pandemic, now it's possible for us to really respond to that. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Anshu, for that overall reminder. And I think you very well highlighted what we are up against. That this poverty is an ongoing disaster, not that disaster is finished. I think it's a great statement of what we are up against. You also have highlighted that people who came to the cities came by compulsion, and we have to look at their issues as not as giving back, as paying back to them. But I think to be clear, you started with a reflection, which I think was very important. I think, and one of the key things you highlighted in that reflection was one, the image of these million people, but more importantly, you said the key driver is the trust had broken down. I think that hit the core in the way we have perceived the whole issue of this pandemic. And you have clearly highlighted that how are we looking at this whole CSR and CSR effort, and how have we built the whole systems. The systems which have worked, as you mentioned, have been the frontline workers, have been the municipal workers, the ASHA workers, and the big things we thought we were building, the infrastructure projects, really were lying idle and shut down. So you sort of give a lens for us to sort of reflect and look at it. And I think very important to bring that lens. And when we look at a transformational change going forward, your whole idea was first, look beyond hunger, look beyond PPE, look beyond vaccine. We need to look at the next stage, and don't forget many layers of work which need to get done. And you highlighted many of them, like mental health, cancer. I think all these things which got neglected in this last few months have to be restarted again. Second is that to look at the entire problem from people lens rather than from our lens. I think that many of us have been faulty of. And the issue you brought right at the forefront is this whole issue of dignity for the beneficiary. And the point about your whole concept of how much they've subsidized us, and why are we not looking at this as a paying back rather than as giving back. And clearly, I think you've highlighted a very whole set of issues. And the way you said is that this journey is not going to complete in a short run. And this journey is not going to be done by moving people from village to cities, but this is going to be done by not only looking at our cities to be better, but focusing on how do we make the villages even better, so that this whole migration stops and we make the living all across India much, much better. I think you've highlighted great sort of a landscape which the CSR needs to look at. And lastly, also, when you laid all this together, I thought there was a theme of collaboration. We can't do this alone. I think everyone is doing little piece, but put together, it can be a great impact. And thank you for those kind words of reflection. I will leave it to Seema on one offer you made about question and answer. So I'm going to make an announcement. I will invite Rumjum to come in, but Seema, if people want to post their questions, they can, because we won't get Anshu many time and Ramanan that easily. This is the time people can ask you questions. So I'm going to watch my chat box, but you are master at it. I'm working with an iPad today, so if you can leave to all the audience that they can post one or two questions, and it'd be wonderful to come back. May I now invite Rumjum while people post their question. Anshu, you please be with us. Please be with us for some more time, and Ramanan, please be with us. Rumjum, over to you on your thoughts. And also, I think you need to weave in what both the speakers have said.
Absolutely.
I think they've left a lot of important messages for us as we start to reflect on this whole as a CSR committee of CII. Over to you, Rumjum.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mukundan. And it's great to be here with everybody once again on another National CSR Summit. This year, of course, the theme of saying future forward, rebuilding CSR, and particularly after we've heard both Ramanan and Anshu, the definition of rebuilding CSR, we have to take much, much more seriously. Future forward, yes, from where we are today, lots of messages I think we have got. The pandemic certainly brought us into a situation where we are all rethinking. We are rethinking not just how we will tackle our own going forward, but very importantly, rethinking, re-strategizing. That I think has become very, very crucial. And therefore, the newer challenges, that the opportunities that lie ahead to do things differently and to relook through very different is very starkly in front of us. I'm going to keep this very short because I would like those questions to, and we can have the comments of both Anshu and force it to think differently. And I think that's really going to drive CSR and a different way of looking at how we can create change and bring about a different impact in the lives of so many who have been impacted by this. But I think what has also happened is that we are looking forward. The entire year has gone by in the whole thing of first addressing hunger, as you said, then re-looking at lives. We're looking at livelihoods, and now the vaccine begins to be discussed. We don't know when it will be with us. The CSR twist to that seems to be how can we ensure that who need it the most. This is a point in our lives also where we already upon us. We are looking at we can ensure that people are able to get the fruits of economic recovery in their lives in some meaningful. We spoke about systems and processes that we saw crumbling and the gaps very clearly showing up. There is also, therefore, through CSR and efforts of all of the different stakeholders today, to relook at the systems and processes that will make us address such disasters and be a community resilient going forward. This summit every year has served as an excellent platform to bring together some of the best minds from different civil society to discuss not just how CSR can play a role, but also through those efforts can bring about greater social development at the grassroots. Now, today's summit, of course, through different sessions today, we will be relooking at the ways that we need to redefine CSR and the critical role that it is going to play challenges that we are today facing. As I said, I think our focus this year is going to once again remain on addressing the needs of what has been thrown up by the pandemic. It has been hunger, it has been livelihoods, but right now, I think the focus is very clearly once again focused on the whole issue of access to health. And with the vaccine almost imminent, we are going to focus a lot more on saying how we allocate that, how do we ensure that everybody gets access to the same, and of course, making sure that the supply chains, the cold chains, the records are updated so that all those who need it are certainly going to be able to access it. But I think I want to go back on a point that I heard Anshu reiterating, saying let us relook at livelihoods, and that too in the rural livelihood sector. Can we ensure that the migration is not one of compulsion, that migration is not necessary foremost, so that we are able to ensure that lives of dignity and the quality of life improves for those who are in the rural sectors, and CSR initiatives will go a long way in certainly building that and reducing the kind of disparities that we have seen. So with that, I'm going to hand you over back to Mukundan so that we can certainly go over some of the issues from the audience that we would like answers from. And thank you once again for participating and being with us, Anshu and Ramanan. It was lovely to hear you, and I hope that all of us will really be able to address many of the issues that you pointed out as being so critical for us. Thank you. Mukundan, I think you're on mute.
I have to learn this thing now to be watchful of these mute, unmute button. Thank you so much. I think thank you, Rumjam, for those words of direction, and I think the perspectives you have shared. Before inviting Anshu, I've got a couple of questions for him. I thought let's also listen into what Mr. Suresh Prabhu had to say to this conference. He's a Sherpa for India in G20 and G7. He's been with us in many of the occasions before, but at this point in time, he has sent a recorded message. Seema, maybe we should play this and then go back to Anshu after that session thing is played. Over to you, Seema. I think the controls are with you.
Chairman, there seems to be some technical issue in terms of transmitting the message. So maybe we can take the Q&A first, and then by then we'll try to see if we can sort this out, Chairman. Apologies for this.
No, not at all, Seema. I think this is very minor problem these days, which we have encountered. I'm sure we can at least read out key messages. So I think let me start while we, Seema, you collate questions from the audience. Anshu, I just wanted to highlight in the perspective of what you said, how are you reorienting Goonj itself? Maybe that gives us some thought, some direction in terms of how you're thinking about it, because especially your emphasis on rural and your emphasis on how do we let people remain there. Sorry, I think some video has started. So do you want to address that, Anshu, in terms of...
Yeah, I can. I thought the video is there. No,
I think it starts. Yeah.
So, I think the way Goonj used to operate is largely the hub and spoke model, right? And we work with a few hundred partners in now 25, 26 states and union territories. And the common belief about Goonj is that we work on the issue of clothing. But as we say, metaphor, we are actually channelizing this 6,000 tons of material as a parallel currency or as an additional resource to the villages. So we are a hardcore rural infrastructure, water, sanitation organization. Like last year, we made or repaired almost about 500 kilometers of village roads, and a large number of water bodies. Because what we realize is that there are two things: either you kill the mosquito, or you treat the malaria. So how do you really do that? So one of the options is that go back to the villages and solve whatever little issues, because you also have very huge skill and local resources and local wisdom to solve the rural problem. I mean, why often we fail? Because we take our own skills there. And how do we really make local people as a stakeholder? Right? This is how Goonj has grown. And that, as I'm saying, that entire pipeline really worked. So it became a little bit overwhelming for us, because fine, we laid that grid, but we never imagined in our life that a day will come when the entire pipeline has to be used. Right? Otherwise, in disasters, you use a particular area and other areas are there to support. But this is something where the need became, absolutely same all across the country. So that is where we said that now, because you have to minimize the human touch, you have to minimize the burden on the logistics. Can we become more local there, where the procurement will also start happening locally that way? So now even the kit making is largely shifted to the smaller areas that way. Then we also said that let us also focus on maybe large part of agriculture or the kitchen garden space, where every single family starts having its own piece of, whatever they have. So instead of using it for the morning calls and all, can you start growing some vegetables there, so that the nutrition really changes, and your dependence on the pulses which you grow and go to the city for polishing and come back to you at a higher prices, actually that goes down. So we've been able to build those thousands of kitchen gardens all across the country with these small people. So you don't need a farmer for that, right? I mean, otherwise farming and all, you always attach a farmer. It's the average person next door space of even 10 square feet or 15 square feet can grow enough vegetable for himself or herself, right? So, and the other important part which we learned, Mukundan, is that earlier for us, these thousands, lakhs of people with whom we used to work, they were like the community or the village people, as we say. This is first time we learned that within the community there are communities. So these were there, but we were not focusing in that way. So we know that sex workers and transgenders are going to be the people who will get their job exactly at the fag end of it. We understood that within those communities there are artisans, there are musicians, there are different kind of, say, right from mukhota makers to whatever, because this entire year we didn't have those kind of celebrations where these millions of people used to survive on those items which they used to sell in the melas and all. So we started, I think, we built up a lot of capsules to operate. With whom, what approach needs to work. So although we are a firm believer of this, but I think this pandemic again, maybe cemented those thoughts that we literally have to, again, I'm repeating that, change lenses, look at the issues with those lenses, find those solutions locally. And in one part of Odisha, the solution which has come might not be applicable in the other part of Odisha itself. I mean, I'm not even talking about Pan India and other states. I'm saying that within Odisha, you need two different solutions with two different communities. I think that's what we have been able to do. And also, I think the only way to operate in this nation, in this huge nation, is huge collaboration. And NGO sector that way, there are a lot of misconceptions about that. I think it is one of the most collaborative sector. If you just pick up 20, 30 organizations and see that how many collaborations we do, this is the most collaborative sector. How do you really scale it up in terms of collaboration also? With the relationship of equal, that you bring in something, we bring in something. Again, repeating, not donor beneficiary, or resourceless or resourceful. It is that everything is a resource. So when you make a road, your skill is a resource. When you make a bamboo bridge, bamboo is a resource. Even the knowledge that how much water will come in the month of July, is your local knowledge by practice. I cannot have that knowledge. I mean, that's how we are just trying to operate.
Terrific. I think a lot of messages in terms of make it much more local, much more localized, skill-based, and then build this whole thing in a decentralized way rather than some central sitting in the office in the center. I think great messages, Anshu, for all of us. I think you answered some of the questions. I think there's a question on sustainable livelihood, reviving rural economy. I think bulk of your thoughts were on that. I think this about any thoughts on this growing population as well as aging population? We spoke about young, but also I think we have this aging population. Any aspects, any thoughts you have on that?
To be honest, I would say I talk a lot about the dignity part of it. Right? Aging population also is a huge wisdom with us. Right? Unfortunately, the moment because we work on clothing, and one of the most unfortunate part is that we start recognizing people with cloth, that who is skilled, who is unskilled, who is educated, who is uneducated, who is cultured, who is not cultured, just on the basis of cloth. I think those lenses somewhere need to change. And we need to understand that people who have grown in those ecosystems have much, much more wisdom, whether it is agriculture or livelihood or resilience, because there are a large number of people who can teach us a lot, that how do they survive here, every year, the floods in Bihar or cyclone in Odisha or Sundarbans, but they still survive, they grow, they celebrate festivals. So it is, we all talk about this resilience and learning, and we think we are the teachers. I think many of us really have to become the students of the people who go through these tough lives and still live, survive, grow. In whatever parameters might be different. Fine, I might say because there is no pakka house, that's where there is no life. But those people have lived their life in the huts. And as I often say in my lectures, in our homes, the birla putti or whatever putti we put, that also leaks. But in their huts, where there's no cement, it doesn't leak often. So do we really learn from them or not? And that is what will come from the people like them. Unfortunately, with this pandemic, the health of those people is ignored in a big way, very, very big way. In any case, there was not enough attention. And we see a huge amount of life loss, not directly because of COVID, but because of COVID, because other diseases are completely ignored. So if we really have to, look forward for the CSR spend also, I'm again saying that let's take this aging population as one of the target audience for us, value their wisdom and make sure that they have contributed a lot to this country, this world. And it's our role to really, again, pay back and make sure that they live a better life.
Thank you, Anshu. I think that's very important. What you stated was, one is they are source of wisdom and knowledge, and secondly, you said treat them with dignity. I think dignity runs as a theme in whatever you've been saying up to now. I think it's something we should underpin. I think there's a central message to all the people on the on this conference, digitally connected. I think one underlying message which is very clear is whatever we do, we should preserve the dignity of, and I think this goes back to the Gandhian thought. Gandhi, in fact, went on to say, even those who oppose us don't take away their dignity. I think it's very important to leave their dignity at least intact, even as we oppose their ideas. And I think this says that even those we care for, we should leave their dignity. And sometimes by our own caring, we create a sense of barrier to building that dignity. Very, very powerful statement. Sorry, you're going to say something, Anshu. I just.
No, I'm saying that, this entire approach somewhere has to change. So what pained us in this entire phase of pandemic? So there were like large number of corporates and foundations who were very careful about people and who were very careful about the wisdom of the development sector. Because like, suppose I want to come and do something in the corporate sector now after my 22 years here, I might completely fail because I don't know. I don't know large part of it. I have gained a little bit of wisdom in this sector because I'm much closer to the people because that's my target audience. So I think what with this pandemic, people need to learn that let the organizations decide whether the rice is needed or atta. Sitting in our own offices, we don't know. I mean, how many of us really are careful that if you are going to South India, you will actually deliver tur ka dal, and in North the chana dal is okay. Do we really understand that? No, because for us, dal is dal. And the cheapest possible dal in the market is the dal because you have to give it away. I might buy rajma for myself, and I'm talking very small stuff, but it's not small because when you talk about lakhs and lakhs of people and crores of budget, even what dal are you giving is something. So how do we really again I'm saying that how do we value the wisdom of the people who are really close to that? Why it is important to have a photograph of something because we feel that that person is a victim of a disaster. How can I dare to click a picture of a lady who is recipient of a sanitary pad? Am I not the same person who goes to the market, buy a sanitary pad, the ultra thin one, and asks for a black polythene or newspaper? Right? I am even hiding that product, and I want to expose the face of that lady because I need that picture for my record. Can we have better management of data? Can we have different lenses for the data? That how do we really bring data? Data is important, and we also collect that. Today, if you want to know how many pairs of socks have been given, we can find out that data. It's not that we are not doing it, but how are you careful? Because disaster is not the subject of North and East now anymore. Most of the disasters have come in the southern India now, right? These are perceptions. People who think that Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra, no disaster happened. These are rich places. Most of the farmers have committed suicide there in these states. Right? Disaster is next door. And as I always say, jiske paas hota hai, wo khota hai. The people who have more will lose more in any case. And all these cyclones and all other disasters have shown us, that. So how are we more mindful about the respect of people? How long can we have that attitude that I want to live, I want other people to survive? How do we maintain the same standard? Is it important to give 200 ml water bottle and count 1 million water bottles given? Or we understand that 200 ml water bottle is not even enough in the flight? How do we think that a family will survive on the 200 ml water bottle? How do we come out of this dirty game of numbers? Because there are two ways of working. One is that you talk about the work. The second is the work talks about you. And many of us in this forum know it, that work ultimately talks. It takes time. It might not give you an instant Facebook post, okay, or maybe a report to the management, but it does talk, and it does talk much deeper with a lot of respect and with a lot of motivation. I think I'll stop here because the dignity and motivation, all that I can go on and on, because that is something bothering me a lot in any case. I'll stop here.
No, I think a very, very important subject, Anshu. I think you have brought a very important perspective, and I think we will keep this in our mind. I think this whole point about the other lens, you actually unpeeled the other lens in the last 5 minutes much more clearly for all of us when you first mentioned. and really thankful for all your perspective. Seema, there are several other questions, but most of them are in the same vein. So I just want to leave it, and I want to check with you about the message from Mr. Suresh Prabhu. Can we play it, or do you want to sort of defer it for later point? And over to you for closing comments, Seema.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we will try and play it during the break. So I would just like to, in closing, thank all of you, our distinguished speakers, for their insightful thoughts. Mr. Ramanathan, who had to leave, but excellent, as you, Chairman, pointed out, excellent and very inspiring talk. Is it the C2K moment for India, and how do we leverage that? The point that you also recapped. And of course, Anshu, thank you so much for the reality check. I think it's very important for us to get this reality check, and not just a check, but also very, very insightful understanding of how do we actually, move from the way we have been defining our CSR, I would say interventions and investments. I would even call them investments rather than interventions, but defining them through the lens of whom we are trying to help, but with dignity. I think that's really important. And I want to just say that we had in the CII, with one of the small programs that we do in the villages of Punjab and Haryana, we had the similar experience. I'll be very honest, we started the program by looking at it from the lens of air pollution in Delhi. And we couldn't solve it, because that's not the lens we should have anyways used. And I think all of the people who use this lens to solve the problem of air pollution should actually change the lens, the way Anshu was saying. Because the moment we put the lens of the farmer's problem, we were able to actually come up with solutions. So this is a practical example of how in CI itself we learned this lesson. I must admit that we didn't think of it that way. We didn't frame it that way to begin with, right? Sitting in Delhi, we were framing it from the air pollution lens. But the day we went to the ground and we talked to the people, we could understand, and the wisdom you talked about, all the wisdom has come from them. Nothing that we could bring. We learned from them, actually. So I think what you told us, for us, it was a living example of the work that we're still doing. And we think that problems or issues can be solved with the collaboration you talked about, and completely, like you said, with this equal partnership, trust, dignity, empathy at the core of it. So I thank you for that. I want to thank Rumjung for her, very insightful integration of what we are trying to do. Our committee in our work, and how we can learn from what was mentioned by our speakers. And as usual, thank you very much, Chairman, for your leadership, your guidance, and weaving this whole session together. As ladies and gentlemen, we have a very interesting session coming up, a conversation with thought leaders, which will come up at 12 noon. But we have a break right now, and during the break, we will try to play Mr. Suresh Prabhu's message. But thank you very much. Thank you, Anshu. Thank you, Mr. Mukundan. Thank you, Rumjum. Thank you.
Thank you.